Century Point Lending Solutions takes you beyond the glitz and glams, the closing celebrations, and into the bumps and bruises, the twists and turns, and the solutions that gets your deals closed.
Every morning, we brought you the playbook. Quick hits, tips, market insights, strategies that we use to get you to the closing table, right? But on the Playbook Uncut, we're going to dive deep. We're going to go all the way in, right? We're going to talk about those things that are not necessarily the prettiest and let you know what really happens to get these deals to the closing table. Welcome to the Playbook Uncut. I'm your host, Earon Lee.
And I'm your co-host, Tanya Palmer.
And we're the proud owners of Century Point Lending Solutions here located in South Florida. We are licensed to do business not only in Florida, but also in the states of Texas and Georgia. So let's get it going, guys.
Love that. So before we dive into, all the juicy stuff, how long did it take us to get here?
Feels like forever.
I know.
I mean, this baby could not be born.
Well, we birthed it. We're here, and we're excited to just give everybody the insights and just kind of let them see what really goes on.
Yeah, it took some doing because, like you said, we've been talking about this for probably maybe 2, maybe 3 years now.
Yeah.
But as with everything that we do, we want to make sure that we do it right, and we put out a product that we're going to be proud of, and our audience and our partners, colleagues are going to be proud to watch it, right, and be associated with us. So let's get into it, y'all.
All right. Well, my first question for you, Earon, is what is your why? What is your why for doing this?
Maybe wine.
Well, we know you have a whole stack going on. Break it down for us.
My why really is more so just about stability and personal experience that I went through myself.
Give us a little bit more on that.
I mean, growing up, I always had, I grew up with my grandparents, so always had a home to go to, always had a warm meal. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like we had any struggles. Life was good, and some days I wish I could go back to those days. But yeah, just having that stability, I wanted that for myself, for my family. So that's one of the whys. And then another big why was rewind a few years, I was purchasing a home for myself. And even though I had a very good friend that was a mortgage broker at the time who I know would have done me justice, I didn't want her in my business. Yeah, bottom line, I didn't want you in my business, Tanya. So, I went with a big box lender. I went with that lender that has a logo that looks like a spaceship or a rocket ship or something like that, right? But bottom line is, that loan officer kind of started me off on the wrong path. I was told I could qualify for a certain number. I was told I would need a certain amount of money down. And then fast forward, none of that was really true, right? So when the deal started going left, I had to, come back on my hands and knees and bring it to you, and you were able to help me solve the problem. So
my arms. Welcome
but,
you in.
the part of that telling that story is to answer your question about the why. Is like I started thinking, like, how many people out there don't have a Tanya that they can go to when things were going left? So that's my why, is to, make sure we're creating stability for the buyers that comes through our doors, and we're also making sure that they get to the closing table honestly, truthfully, the right way from the start without the twists and the turns and the bumps.
I love your why. I love that.
What about you? What's your why?
Oh, my why changes, with, like, some people like to say the season. So mine does change that way.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the season that I'm in right now that has created my why started a few years ago, which actually started when we started our company. And just knowing that I wanted stability for my kids. I wanted to leave them a legacy. I want them to see what it is to, if you don't want to work a 9 to 5 and you want to have some stability, you're going to work a little harder, because when it's your own business, we don't know 8 hours a day.
Right.
We live, we work up, we breathe it, we sleep it, this business, whatever business you decide to go into. So the why for me definitely stems for just making a better life for my kids, and just my partners. I just want to have more for them.
No, I completely get it, and I'm right there with you. As well as it feels good to not to punch somebody's clock, right?
It does.
Even though we probably work more hours now, but it does definitely feel good to have that freedom in that sense to, you know, if you want to work from 5 a.m. to 5 p.m., you can do that,
Which we do a lot of.
which we tend to do a lot of. But it's important because we have a lot of clients that we want to make sure that they accomplish their goals. So,
Correct. Yes,
you
yes,
know,
yes.
but, outside of that why, for why we're doing this or why we started this company and even this podcast, why do you think home ownership is so important?
Well, for me, I'm gonna say for me, I just wanted to buy a whole bunch of properties, man. I just,
All right.
I knew that there was our famous president. Many don't take to him, but the one thing that I did know about before he was president was he owned properties. He owned buildings. He just owned a lot, and I saw that as a way to say, okay, how can I get some stability?
Right.
Is by owning properties. So I started out that way.
Yeah.
And, for me, the home ownership goal just exceeded my expectations because I realized that I can do so much more. This is also the way for me to retire. I started looking at it that way. So home ownership is not just one home,
Right.
it's turning that one home into multiple homes, right? And making those investment properties that for me, it became, I wanted to retire that way. I wanted my properties to feed me.
And what you're talking about there is generational wealth, which we're not really going to get into on this episode. But, um, you know, real estate, land in general, my grandfather used to always say they're not building any more land, so buy as much as you can,
Yeah.
right? So you right on that same tone or that same thought process is I agree with you. I mean, real estate is probably the one tool that I don't care what walk of life you come from, if you're able to secure some real estate for yourself, then you're able to start to build some of that wealth that you talk about. And the stability that I talked about too is that is huge for me, is just being able to know that you always got somewhere to go to.
Yeah.
No matter what's happening, no matter how much your partner at work pisses you off that day, you always got a home that you can go to, right? So it's very important to me from that aspect.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm going to turn this to you then, but why do you think more people are not using, homeownership to build themselves up? Why do you think there is that hesitation with people?
um, Fear factor, and not so much fear factor that's coming from within,
Mm.
fear factor that comes from the outside.
Oh, that can be the worst.
Mama, daddy, sister, brother, uncle, cousin,
Mhm.
in your ear about, hey, a bad experience that they may have had. They weren't approved because, hey, maybe let's be clear, maybe their credit wasn't where it was supposed to be approved. Maybe they didn't have the amount of income that they needed to be approved, right? But they bring that negativity to you, and you buy into it because, of course, as mom and dad and uncle and family friends that you trust. So if they're telling you this, you're gonna believe it, right? So I think on my end, what I see a lot of that. I see a lot of fear coming from the outside influences versus from coming from the inside, right?
Another part to that is just lack of education. People just not knowing. And I don't want to say lack of education, it's just that they just don't know what it is. They don't know the information out there. I had a client call me recently and her situation was, I want to buy a home, Tanya. I'm ready to buy my home, but I'm not ready. And I'm like, why do you think you're not ready? You know what she said?
Mm-hmm.
My credit score. So I'm like, okay, I understand. What's your credit score? 760. Right? I'm like, well, that's a very good credit score,
Right,
right?
right.
Then her next thing was, I don't have money. I would have to take it from my 401k. I don't have enough money saved. I said, well, let's pause for a minute because did you know that you can use your 401k to purchase a home? She went bananas. Like she could not believe what I was telling her because everything she had seen or heard, and this is the kicker. She said she needed 20% down.
I can't believe that in this day and age that people still think that they need 20% down to buy a home.
This
I
is what they
mean,
said. So yes, they
yeah.
really do think that they need 20%. So it's just not knowing that. And to me, you would think this is a person who great credit,
Mm-hmm.
great income, has some funds, and you would think she would have known that information, right? Or she'll be hearing that information. No, she was hearing I need 20% down. I don't know why she think her credit score wasn't good enough, and she felt like I can't go to anybody else. I probably have to get a loan from a family member to help me. Like it was just so much misinformation that was out there. And she was just feeding on it.
Yeah.
And that to the point where she just said, I can't do it.
And think about how many people that has that same mindset, right? It's sad, and I'm glad you were able to obviously help her and close on that property with her. But I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's you education or lack of education is not the right way to put it. It's just that they really just
They don't
don't know what they don't know. They don't know.
they don't know.
And I'm glad that there's platforms like this and that we're here to be able to bring them to that
Yes.
information, bring them to the table to where they can have those conversations, talk about the fears, and we can guide them. Right?
Yeah.
That's the reality of what we do. Is we're, I don't want to say guidance counselors, but I mean it kind of is what we do, right? You want to accomplish something, and we're here to help guide you to that, to that goal.
I know you touched on this, but I'm gonna ask you to elaborate a little bit. That there's a lot of people who rely solely on their family and their friends for guidance, and when they have to buy a home, what do you say to someone who they're listening to you, but they're also listening to mom, dad, cousin, uncle, everybody else, and then I think all of a sudden your voice becomes silenced.
Yeah,
How do you
yeah.
handle that?
So first of all, let's look at our hands. What's the one thing that we all have that's unique?
I'm gonna say fingerprints.
Right. So to still, I steal this line from one of our realtor partners that we worked with for a while now. Is she always, whenever we get ready to have a conversation or go into the buyer's consultation with a client, one of her things is always to get your financial fingerprints read. Right. That is what the pre-approval process is about. And the reason why that's important is that you have 10 fingers, and every single one of those fingers has a different fingerprint, have different markers, right? So for someone looking to purchase a home, relying on what mom and dad is saying, relying on what auntie is saying, cousin is saying,
Hmm.
not saying that they're wrong. That was their experience.
Yes,
That was
that's the key.
their financial fingerprint, right? Your fingerprints are going to be different, right? You more than likely you don't work at the same place. More than likely your credit scores are not exactly the same. More than likely you may have more or less money than they had, right? So your situation is always going to be different,
Yeah.
right? Are there similarities? Sure. You need a pre-approval. Sure. You need a certain credit score. Sure. Those things are generic across the board. But your particular set of fingerprints, your particular set of steps that you have to take to get your keys and to close on that home is going to be based solely upon you. We love mom and dad. We love all the cousins. We love everybody, right? But they are not you. They
Yes.
are not you. Their situation is not your situation.
Yep. And just to talk back on that, sometimes the best thing to do is to do things and then let them see your results.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in asking for forgiveness rather
Yes.
than asking for permission.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, they're there. They're there to support you. But sometimes you gotta just sneak away and do what you gotta do because again, too many ears, too many voices.
Yeah,
it,
it
it
can
can
it
be a
can get
lot.
real cloudy. It can get real cloudy, and sometimes that alone, like you said, that alone in itself, sometimes information overload can be just as bad as not having enough information, right? So for anybody out there who's looking to purchase a home or considering purchasing a home, getting approved, maybe have that consultation with your mortgage broker first. And then once you have your pre-approval, then you might want to share the news at that point if you choose to. I'd probably wait until closing day, but that's just me, you know. So the topic of let's shift gears a little bit. The topic of a bank versus a mortgage broker, right?
Hmm.
I'm sure you get it. I get it. Clients sometimes feel like they'll get a better deal with their bank. And let's be clear. Let's address the purple elephant in the room, right? If you go back to when the market crashed in 2008, 2007, 2008, a lot of those so-called bad loans, they were attributed to brokers, right? So thankfully, the broker community has come a long way since then. But there's still a little bit of little gray area when you talk about a broker versus a bank. What is your thoughts on that, and what would you say to a client who's on the fence trying to decide where to go?
Well, coming from the era of 2008, 2007, when that whole market crashed, I get it. I
Yeah.
get why people and why homeowners would be hesitant to work with a broker. Um, but so much has happened, and I'm kind of happy that 2008 happened. I am happy.
Really? Why?
Yes, because it allowed the industry to change. We had
Okay, I
buyers who
see
were
that.
going, and I've seen it. We had buyers that were going to the closing table not knowing where their interest rate was, not knowing what their monthly payment was, not knowing their cash to close. They were finding out the day of closing or at the closing table. To me, that was ridiculous. I
Yeah.
found that very upsetting, very disturbing for our industry. So I was happy when that happened because it allowed regulators to change. It allowed for a lot of regulations to be set now where buyers have to be notified 3 days before closing, their numbers, their rate, they have to be notified. And throughout the loan process, they are made aware of what is happening.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that in itself happened to make the industry better, to make brokers better. And because of that, we are better for it.
Yeah, I agree. Because in this day and age, I don't think, especially in our, we can speak for our process. We can't
Hmm.
necessarily speak for everybody, but I think within our process, even before a client actually goes out and starts shopping, they start seeing their numbers. Like you're
Oh, yeah.
pre-approved, and this is what it's gonna take. This
Hmm.
is how much money you're gonna need to come to the table. Now we can do different things creatively, whether down payment assistance or seller credits or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But this is what it's gonna take for you to close on a home of this purchase price. This is what your interest rate should look like.
Hmm.
And then subsequently, this is what your monthly payment should look like, right?
Right.
So I agree. I think the 2008, sadly, a lot of people lost homes. A lot of things got turned upside down. No pun intended. But the industry itself, the mortgage world became better for it, right?
I mean,
So,
one of the things that makes us great too as brokers versus the banks, and again from past experience, is our availability to our
yeah,
clients. The banks they have their set hours. They're usually there from 9 to 4, 9 to 5, whatever that is. On this side of things, I hate to say it, but we're literally almost like we're 24 hours,
hmm
but we're not. But
hmm
our timing, we're more accessible. Yeah. So I always say this: future homeowners, future buyers, they work 9 to 5, majority of them,
yep,
right? So they need to be able to reach you after hours. It's not a situation where okay, they want to be on their job and try to talk to you about their finances. They want to do that after they have gotten home, after they have relaxed, after they have made dinner for the kids, after they have done all the day's work to say, okay, let me jump on a call with Earon or Tanya because now, and we have to be able to facilitate that and be open for that.
right,
Not
right,
only that, I know for a fact that most of the times our loan programs are more. We have more variety. You like to use the Uber Eats analogy, but it's a great analogy because it really reflects who we are.
yeah, and I really believe that. I mean, because you know I really think that's the biggest difference between a banker and a broker, right? If you go into an Italian restaurant, what's on the menu? Some spaghetti and meatballs, maybe some lasagna, maybe a little chicken parmesan,
Some baked
maybe
ziti.
some baked ziti, right? So but they're all Italian-based options, right? Because you're in an Italian restaurant. But if you jump on Uber Eats and you start scrolling, you have access to steaks, you have Italian, you have Chinese, you have Asian, you have Greek, you whatever your palate calls for
Yeah,
at
some
that
sushi.
moment, there you go. But whatever your palate calls for, you're going to have an option because now you're bringing everything together on one platform,
Yeah.
right? And to me, that's the difference between a banker and a broker. With a broker, you have, think of us as your Uber Eats of mortgages, right?
Hmm.
Anything that you want, we can go get that for you. We can have it delivered to you, right? Whereas a banker, hey, if you feel for Italian, you got to go to Italian. If you feel for a steak, you got to go to the steakhouse, right? So that's really the difference between the two, and probably the best way I know how to explain it to someone that asks that question,
Okay.
especially in this day and age.
Yeah, I mean, you're right there. And I'm gonna slide in, like, okay, so You got the buyer, they're wanting to work with you, but their fear now is, how do I trust your process? How do I trust your systems? Knowing what happened in 2008, how do I trust you moving forward?
Tanya, that's a great question, right? But I think trust is something that's earned. And I think one of the best ways to earn trust is having face to face, right?
Mhm.
Um, Rewind a couple of years ago, we went through the whole COVID situation, right? Where everybody were in masks and gloves. I remember doing closings and there was a plexiglass window between everybody and passing papers with gloves and stuff, right? That's a trust thing, right? Because there was this disease going around and
Yeah.
nobody wanted to catch it. So we trusted those devices to protect us, right? The mask and so forth. So it's the same factor for me. I feel like if you can engage with your client, I prefer in person personally, but obviously when you work in multiple states, you can't be everywhere at once, right?
If
So
we could, we would
if we could, we would. Thinking about shipping you to Texas, but but that trust factor, that face to face, I think is what really is going to build that. You get to connect with the person. I'm old school. My grandfather used to say, when you shake a man's hand, you shake his hand firm and you look him in the eye, right? So maybe a little cliche, but I think that's the where you break down those barriers.
Yeah.
Um, as far as you like the technology side of things and so forth, all our systems are top notch secured. So if you're uploading documents there through the secure portal, they're coming to me or you. They're not all over the world. Personally, I don't like when clients some clients will want to send you stuff via text or WhatsApp. That's not secure.
Yeah.
So use the portal. Or if you prefer, walk into the office and drop off the documents. Walk into the office, grab a cup of coffee or maybe a glass of wine with Tanya. But walk into the office, drop off the documents, see who you're
Mm.
talking to, whether it's me, you, Ashanti, or Carol, one of the ladies here in the office. Somebody's going to be here to greet you. Somebody's here going to be able to talk to you. We're real people, right? And with everything going AI and chat bots and stuff right now, if you're just talking to the computer, who do you know? Who you really talking to?
Yeah.
Who you really talking to? So to me, that's where you as a loan officer, as a mortgage broker, that's where you got to earn your trust is having that one on one and being available. Like you mentioned earlier, had to have those conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. They just like I like to put it this way. No matter what you're looking at, sometimes you just Googling a restaurant. You want to see those 5 stars. You want to. So guess what? You're gonna Google. You're gonna look up whomever, whatever. Do the same with the person you're working with.
Yeah, I mean, like, what was it, earlier this week? You were looking for a new primary care doctor, and you're sitting there just like Googling and seeing who does what, when, where, their Google reviews. Heck, even if somebody goes on Amazon today and they decide to buy a flashcard or buy a pen, they're looking at the reviews.
They are.
So why not do that same due diligence on your mortgage broker, your loan officer before you commit to somebody, right? Look at what people say about them. Look at what the Google reviews say. Everybody nowadays is pretty much on social media, right? So check them out, see what they do, see how they do, right, and see if that's somebody you wanna align with. You
I agree. Check out who you're working with. Best advice.
know?
Does that wrap us up?
What do you mean, are we done yet? No, we're not done yet. I got one more question before we get out of here today.
Okay.
So, you ready for this one?
I guess I don't have a choice.
You sure you don't want to take a drink?
Let me hear the
Take a
question
sip.
first.
So, there's a question out there, especially in the industry amongst our colleagues and stuff like that. And everybody seems to want to know, what is our status? Oh, now you want to drink. Okay. All right. Let me let you take your sip. Let me let you take your sip.
Ooh.
Oh, like that? Wow.
What is our status?
Mm-hmm.
You're my business partner
Mm-hmm.
and my life partner. You like that?
Mm,
You like that?
yeah. No, but seriously, I mean, we get the question a lot, and we are we're very private people in that regards, and I don't believe that any relationship should be you should have a relationship in the eye of the public. So if you happen to be in the circle, if you know, you know, you know, and if you don't, you don't. And that's okay too. And you can certainly think or believe or feel any which way you want to feel about it. That is entirely up to you.
You said it best.
Really?
Yes.
Okay,
Well, I
okay.
think we just wrapped up our first episode here.
Yeah, I think for the first one we it was a good showing, I think. So we'll see what the viewers say. So, on that note, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the Playbook Uncut. If you heard something on this episode that just got your mind going, if you heard some information that you think is beneficial to you or maybe to a family member or a friend, please, please, please subscribe to our channel so you can get more information, more gems, more topics will be discussed. And please go look us up on all the social media platforms, like and follow us everywhere. We are everywhere at Century Point Lending Solution. See y'all soon.